Welcome to this economics roundtable hosted by Asia Pacific Economics. We're joined by our guest, Ralph Jennings, political economy correspondent for the South China Morning Post. My name is Rajiv Biswas. I'm the CEO of Asia Pacific Economics. Let's talk about China's brands because we've seen really significant developments in the last decade. China's population gradually declining and also the consumer market growth rate has been moderating. This is probably very important for some of the big Chinese consumer companies to internationalize and look for fast-growing markets elsewhere, particularly in emerging markets. At the moment, are perhaps seeing a relatively small group of big Chinese brands who have been very successful. I presume there may be a next wave of second-tier Chinese companies which may be on the verge of expanding globally as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that forecast. I think they definitely will. As you say, the domestic market in China has gotten saturated in so many sectors, and the involution issue with the cutthroat pricing following the overcapacity. So there's just too many goods floating around in China without consumers. So what do? You could shut down your factories, and then you have joblessness and income issues domestically. So if you can keep going and keep producing things and find a market offshore, then of course you're going to keep on selling your PCs and your phones and your consumer appliances, especially in countries like in ASEAN where the made in China has a pretty strong name for quality overall. They'll continue to do well there. The South countries will also show a keener interest in buying stuff from China as they develop and they need more of these goods. And I think it'll stay on the same two tracks. So we'll see more electronics and appliances, maybe electric vehicles, and also fast food is just the rudimentary consumer brands. I don't think we're going to see, for example, financial services or banking. So in the fast food space, I see Mixue, that's the ice cream and drink brand. You see physical retailers throughout Southeast Asia. They're popping up in the United States. And of course, they're all over China as well. And I did a story on that in the early part of last year, interviewing consumers, particularly in Malaysia at that point, and in Vietnam about some of these brands. Another one you see is a hot pot brand called Haidilao. I believe they're a listed company. They do very festive restaurants. They'll sing happy birthday to you and you can have your office party and all this stuff. They're everywhere. In fact, these two brands are also opening stores in the United States. The ironic part is they don't really brand themselves as being Chinese. So you can walk into a store outside of China and you see the brand, you see the name, you see the menu. The staff people are locals. It doesn't say China. You don't see Chinese characters. So you don't really know that's where they're from. And perhaps these companies are trying to delete their Chinese identity in case anybody there has an issue with them politically. And they're doing pretty well as far as I can tell. Their public relations aren't great. I can say that as a journalist when we need to reach out to them, but they're getting better. In the consumer electronics space, you see Oppo. It's a phone brand. Also Xiaomi, they do phones. They do a lot of other smaller, for the most part, consumer electronics. Sometimes you see Huawei phones. You see Lenovo PCs out there quite a bit. Plus the older consumer appliance brands like household goods by Hisense and Haier, those are both Chinese. The mobile phones and the laptops have been around for even longer, I believe. If you go into a consumer electronics mall or even a small store or a telecom provider office in Vietnam, among other countries, you will see handsets made by 4 or 5 different Chinese brands, sometimes all using the Android system, which open source. It's not like the Apple iOS. These phones sell for much less money. They don't always work as well as the higher end things, but they're good enough. They really work well in some of these developing countries where you need a phone, but you don't have a lot of money to put out for one. And I remember China became either the first or the largest or both, the provider of smartphones to Africa. And there was a certain brand that was selling there that you don't even see anywhere else in the world. It sold at a low price. The African consumers were happy about it. So they have that laurel as well to carry around. And then you're seeing a lot of BYD electric vehicles coming up everywhere.
Thank you so much for sharing your views with us today.
Thanks, Rajiv, for having me. It's my pleasure, too.